Le jardinier, il ne cultive plus la tradition depuis longtemps.
Comme Noël, je m'en fous. Pâques, je m'en fous. Le Ramadan, je m'en fous.
Vous êtes amoureux de vos fleurs, quoi?
Non, même pas, je m'en fous
même pas
aussi.
Uncle George.
Japan. A land ravaged by many disasters like volcanoes, tsunamis, earthquakes, American streamers.
Hiroshima, Nagasaki, you know what we do to you niggas.
Has but another one to add to the list. A pair consisting of an angry Frenchman cornered by the Chinese and a Canadian woman who seems to be going through a midlife political identity crisis. These people, surrounded by bored and unfulfilled yet strong and empowered female office workers, finally came out of the woodwork to bring you the game that you have been asking for since the original AC launched. Assassin's Creed Shadows takes us finally to the land of the rising overtime with a protagonist duo that makes redditors get their little willies excited, weeps getting ready to march with pitchforks, Japanese being like NANI?! While most of us just kinda looking at it with a blank expression, expecting nothing more and nothing less from a studio like Ubisoft at this point. At long last, you get to explore the unique and dangerous land of intrigue, politics and violence through the eyes of a bisexual African slave that can ram himself through gates as easily as he can ram a dude in the ass, and a bisexual woman shinobi who is capable of murdering an entire band of bandits in open combat.
Right.
To top it all off, both are driven by a motivation so fucking stupid that it's honestly difficult not to look at it and wonder what kind of fentanyl this girl was snorting up there in Quebec. I will touch on it shortly, but before we go, spoiler warning. I will be going through the events of the never-ending tutorial, the prologue, and Act 1 up until our protagonists meet for the first time. You have been warned. But in all honesty, trust me, you've little reason to care about the story. It's a Ubisoft game after all.
You know what she will give you in return.
Breakfast.
Also, I should point out that you can choose not to engage in any of the romance options. As well, you can practically avoid playing as Yasuke, but just like the microtransaction shop that you can technically pay no attention to, the option is there, which means work went into it for you to see and interact with. It was done on purpose, not by any coincidence, so I will cover it. It is optional, I get that, but it is there. Okay? Okay. We kick things off with Diogo having a little monologue, followed by him accompanying his masters and an expensive looking chair to meet with Oda Nobunaga, a very influential figure in the annals of Japanese history. During the doji meeting, Diogo, soon to be Samurai Yasuke, looks at the sword and immediately becomes the best warrior Oda Nobunaga, the daimyo responsible for starting the unification of Japan, has ever seen with his eyes.
You ask me to let your priests walk freely, but your priests are here already, Father Valegnano. Perhaps before you worry about your priest feet, you may wish to plead for their heads. Your black man has the instincts of a warrior. As he realized the danger you are in, his eyes found every threat in the room.
To top it all off, Diogo is already perfectly fluent in Japanese, having completed his 5-year slave studies on board of the Portuguese vessel.
Lord Nobunaga, I do understand you.
And soon the two of them kick it off like a pair of BFFs.
Lord Nobunaga would like to speak with Diogo. Alone.
Not long after, they ride together like Django and Schultz.
Ooh, this nigga on that name.
Oh, Stephen, you have nails for breakfast.
So that Yasuke can do what he does best, ram himself through a gate or two and murder the entire village. After all the peasants I wiped from the face of the earth, Nobunaga is so pleased that he probably said something to the extent of
I like you. Come over to my house and fuck my sister.
On the other side of the conflict is Naoe, a shinobi from the village of shinobis, trained by her father shinobi to become a shinobi and recognized by the shinobi council as a shinobi. You see, she's a shinobi, by the way. That's very important. There are some retrospectives to her earlier life that serve less of a long-winded yet very shallow tutorial and more as a woman empowerment moment.
Naoe, you are all Nagato has. It is why he protects you so. But when destiny comes to your door, you must answer. Blade first at times.
She then gets tasked with retrieving and protecting a box, an objective she fails at the closest possible occasion, leading to her father being murdered and her left to die in a field. Fortunately for her and unfortunately for us, she is rescued and nurtured back to health by a monk. And this fat little blob, and you know by the way he's designed that they wanted to put him in a wheelchair or something, but some level-headed cultural advisor convinced them that wheelchairs were not a thing in feudal Japan. She then goes on a revenge mission to murder all involved in her father's untimely demise. To achieve her goal, she builds a women empowerment camp in the mountains and proceeds to seek out and murder all assailants and retrieve the box.
You will need much, then. Allies, supplies.
And a place to put them.
After successfully assassinating 2 members of the group, the things are looking rather well for the young shinobi Naoe, right until the moment she gets played like a bitch by the leader of the group and ends up fighting Nobunaga instead. The moment she is ready to deliver the final blow, however, she is stopped by Yasuke, and despite him being Nobunaga's buddy and bodyguard, he disobeys the order to kill Naoe after seeing the assassin's blade.
Blade. It is you. Kill her. Now. You cannot.
Yep, just like that. Nobunaga, seeing what kind of farce of a game he is forced to be in, decides to nope the fuck out with good old seppuku. He then gets finished off via decapitation by Yasuke himself. Something that went down especially well with the Japanese audience, I am sure. After the dust settles and Naoe realizes she's been bent over and fucked by the man she was searching for, the 2 protagonists meet and Yasuke is now full on ready to switch sides just like that. At first, Naoe is having none of that shit until the blob comes out and makes a speech about everyone being a monster and the power of forgiveness, and then all of a sudden all is good and the protagonists join forces to terrorize Japan together. My, what a great start to the story, eh? From this point onward, you are free to pick whichever character strikes your fancy and begin the usual map clearing slot gameplay Ubisoft games are known for. There are towers to climb, people to kill, spots to meditate, animals to draw, and supplies to gather. You know, the usual. On the surface, if you enjoy this iconic Ubisoft gameplay loop, there's really nothing to get angry over. It is the same tried and tested formula as always, competently made and predictably mediocre, bound to provide a few hours of mindless fun at least. That is, as long as you play as Naoe. If I didn't know Ubisoft all too well, it would still be baffling to me why Yasuke is even a playable character. Stripped down of most of the abilities that make an Assassin's Creed protagonist, Yasuke can be seen at best as a comic relief and at worst a realization of a historical wet fanfiction conjured in the dysfunctional head of one Thomas Lockley, an ex-associate professor at Nihon University who kind of made this story up and then edited Wikipedia articles to help his book sell. Suffice to say, the university was less than thrilled with him, but I digress. Yasuke can be best described as a tank. Can't stealth, can't climb anything bigger than an American picket fence, and his assassination have to be accompanied by a loud grunt that alerts everybody in the vicinity. Clearly Ubisoft has envisioned a very specific way you should be playing as him, i.e. you meant to be charging head first into battle. But the game is called Assassin's Creed, and that's the last thing you're technically supposed to be doing in a game like that. But it's fine, let's say you want a little bit more of a rampage in your AC game. You can just as easily do that with Naoe, while still retaining the option to be stealthy whenever you want. Furthermore, it's painfully obvious that Yasuke's involvement in the story and gameplay was severely cut back due to the backlash. I don't have any evidence of that, but I'm quite confident that there were instances previously that forced you to play as him, just like in the prologue. This, combined with the fact that you can choose to introduce his black katana into Nobunaga's sister, another point that must have gone really well with the Japanese, or ram the ass of a confused dude, not too dissimilar to modern day French I might add.
Vous pensez? Moi je pense pas. sur mon avis.
Makes me believe that Yasuke was never ever anything else than a diversity insert for the sake of it. You just know there were people at Ubisoft grinding their teeth because there was no feasible way to cram in even more diversity in this setting. So they made sure to dump all their virtue signaling onto him while simultaneously making him unplayable. So, is there anything at all good in this game? Well, yes. Yes, there is. For one, it looks quite amazing, even if a bit inconsistent at times. On one hand, you have breathtaking vistas and on the surface, a vibrant world ready to explore. On the other hand, you have water, which I guess didn't go as planned. And the world you explore will have typically 3 or 4 copy and pasted activities for you to be forced to undertake for the next 80 hours or so. The now changing seasons is definitely a welcome addition, with areas changing from lush and green to covered in snow and fog. Granted, that doesn't really change that much in terms of gameplay, but hey, it's nice and I appreciate it. The climbing is fun as always, despite running into an occasional bug here and there. And the base building can be fun, if you're into that kind of thing. If you can be bothered to hunt for resources and use scouts, which you never have enough of. Swear to God, it might be just me, but after clearing an area and getting to the loot, I discover I don't have enough scouts to loot everything. Meaning either a trip to the hideout and paying for more, or changing seasons, meaning all enemies respawn. Not a big fan of that system at all. And trust me, that's not the only thing I'm not a fan of. I guess now is as good a time as any to talk about the system I hate the most, which is the combat. My god, is it fucking awful. Now granted, I've squeezed shadows in between playing Demon's Souls Remake for the first time and replaying Ghost of Tsushima Director's Cut, so my opinion might be a bit skewed, but I've seen people saying that they can't get enough of it and for that reason they're going through the game as Yasuke only. Really? Am I being trolled? I guess it is subjective, but my god, it did not click for me. Firstly, you get your standard fare of light and heavy attacks, and a modifier guard breaker if you hold the button for longer. These all feel very stiff, especially the guard breaks, which have this little animation which opens you for an attack or makes you completely miss the target. Next, you don't get a block, but this weird 1-second parry attack that seems to be designed to make parrying as awkward as humanly possible. And to top it all off, you get this weird dodge that goes everywhere except where you really want it to go. Equipped with those unresponsive and clunky controls, you dodge when the enemy weapons glow red and parry when it glows blue. At least you try to. If the weapon is not glowing, you are hacking away at an enormous health bar that can get substantially longer when you're even slightly underleveled. Once the health bar is depleted, you will get 1 of 3 death animations, all of which are too long and repeating far too often, or if it fails to play, the opponent will just kind of fold himself to the ground. Now, don't get me wrong, Assassin's Creed was never known for its amazing combat, but don't tell me Shadows is not a massive downgrade from the likes of Valhalla, for example. Either that, or I have a serious case of not getting good. Speaking of getting good, the leveling system, or to be more precise, the region levels. The fact that the regions are level locked is nothing new for an Assassin's Creed game, but once you hit the level of an area, that area and all other lower ones will scale up to yours. Now, there's always been a debate about level scaling, and there are good and bad arguments on both sides, but I find myself in the camp of level scaling sucks ass. If I grind, I want to be OP, plus AC games rarely ask you to revisit the areas you've cleared. I mean, really, there's no reason to do so. Level scaling robs the player from the sense of progression, at least in my eyes. And yeah, my tiny monkey brain wants to go back from time to time and murder everybody with ease. So there's that. Next up is the god-awful dialogue and cutscenes.
I killed him, Chichiue. He was as big as a...
Are you hurt? Answer me!
This is not my blood.
Naoe herself, at least in the English dub, sounds like a Californian wannabe hip-hop star reading for her audition to American Has Talent.
Don't you understand? I was wrong. I chose wrong. I was lied to and manipulated, and now I'm left with nothing. While Lord Mitsuhide has an army.
Then you kill them.
Is she even Japanese? Oh yes, she is. And alright. Well, that explains a lot, actually. While the rest of the cast sounds like they've been written and voiced by AI.
Welcome, dear customer. Perhaps our paths will cross again.
No, seriously, listen to this and tell me it doesn't sound a bit odd.
I caught this one running back to his master. Antonio! We could have used him!
What? Kuretake's worms would rather die than talk.
Why is the sword your first response?
See what I mean? I find it hard to believe that an actual human wrote this. And the angles in some of the cutscenes are just plain weird. Like here where it just constantly cuts to Naoe and just lingers there. The whole pacing suffers and the cutscene just comes out as odd. Combine this together and you have interactions that feel very off. I guess this is the best way to describe this entire game. It's off, it's lazy, and it really shows. You could sense that Eves did not give a fuck anymore. And this is even further exacerbated by the god-awful shop with microtransactions for a single player game. A game, might I add, that you already paid good money for, unless you subscribed. And a shitty cherry on top of that? You guessed it. You can't actually buy anything with real money. Instead, you have these lovely predatory packs of made-up currency that always make you buy more than you need. Overall, looking at this game as a whole, it's just a blunder after blunder for Ubi with this one. To give a few examples, how about that time they used kanji that does not exist for the promotional materials, leaving Japanese creators a little bit baffled on what they were looking at? Or that time when they were using emblems and flags of the Sekigahara Teppotai without permission or any prior communication, for which they had to apologize profusely. Or how about that time they used the broken Torii Gate, a monument of San no Jinja, which stood defiantly after the atomic attack on Nagasaki. Or finally the fact that the game has been moved to a release date which was the anniversary of the sarin attack in Tokyo Metro. To finally, the relegation of Yasuke from prominent character at the beginning to completely optional by the end, but still keeping him and all his antics just to shit on Japanese history even more. You know what? Let me put a tin foil hat for a moment and have a bit of fun with this. It is no secret that Ubisoft have been struggling financially recently, and the Chinese megacorp Tencent was quite interesting in acquiring it. So now we have confirmation that Tencent has bought 25% of Ubisoft. Well, actually a subsidiary of Ubisoft, but the one that has all the big titles in it. Now, since Japanese and Chinese don't like each other very much, what are the chances that all these blunders were made intentionally to sweeten the deal for Tencent? Sadly, I don't have any insiders in Ubisoft, all have been already taken by other YouTubers it seems, but it would be funny if that was the case. Otherwise, the alternative is that Ubisoft is completely clueless and does not give a solitary fuck about any of this. Which, I guess in the modern day and age, is entirely possible. And finally, I think it's as good a time as any to mention the sales numbers, which there are none to speak of. As you might expect from this day and age, there are two groups of people constantly fighting on whether or not Assassin's Creed Shadows is a flop or not. On the one hand, we have the Steam figures, which are not too great to be honest. And on the other, we have Ubisoft proudly boasting that it has 3 million players. Now, regarding the Steam numbers, they obviously don't include the Ubisoft Connect or any console purchases. On the other hand, 3 million players sounds good and all, but Ubisoft wants to force you to get used to not owning games, usually by severely overpricing their titles. If this is the case, then out of those 3 million players, how many are 1-month subscribers? I can tell you from personal experience, whenever Ubisoft releases something, I usually just pop in, buy a 1-month subscription and cancel it immediately, and then enjoy the game until I get bored and then never look back. The initial uptick in revenue might be all well and good, but it's going to be interesting to see what happens after a month or two when those subscriptions expire. Especially now that angry people make the conscious effort to make sure they are not subscribed to Ubisoft for longer than is absolutely necessary. So, will it be a big success for Ubisoft, or the final nail to its coffin? Frankly, I don't know, and I don't really fucking care anymore. It's clear as day to me that the game was like a death rattle fart from the corpse that is Ubisoft that stained the sheets and... Fuck me! What the fuck am I talking about? Jesus. Note to self, make sure to cut this out. All in all, I will say that Assassin's Creed Shadows is yet another example why a video game crash is necessary. AAA, or in case of Ubisoft, Quadruple A, needs to implode as the massive publishers have outstayed their welcome and outlived their usefulness. I think we are not far from this, so just as always, vote with your wallet. It's the only thing that they ever listen to, no matter what they preach. Anyways, if you enjoy the game, don't let me stop you, but personally, if you're on the fence about this one, play Ghost of Tsushima instead. It's cheaper, made with more love and consideration, and it has a good story and fantastic combat. I'll be off now, as the mines are calling. Take care, thanks for watching, and I'll see you when I see you. Till then.